Good morning. Let's try that one more time for day 40. Good morning. Beautiful, beautiful. The time for convening has arrived and the Senate will now come to order. At this time, I'd like to ask that all unauthorized persons exit the chamber. The chair would like to recognize the extremely well-spoken. Was that you laughing or your? Okay. The senator from the 53rd is recognized.
Mr. President, it is day 40. It'll be sine die just momentarily, it will feel. And we want to thank you for your leadership this year in the state Senate. You do an outstanding job, but you do have a good team behind you. Want to say a moment in history was Ray Charles' top chart hit was "I Can't Stop Loving You," and that could be how I feel about you today. I'm not sure. I'll have to think on that. But today is also National Take Your Dog to Work Day, and I'm afraid they're talking about my ex-wife. But the journal's been read and found to be correct.
Senator, I'm worried if any of that is actually in the journal. I hope it's not. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. It's now time for our morning roll call. It is now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? No motions to excuse. The chair recognizes the majority leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we dispense with the reading of the morning roll call, or whatever.
So let me translate that for you here.
Let's skip roll call.
I think the majority leader has asked for unanimous consent to dispense with the morning roll call. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and morning roll call is dispensed with. We're going to stand at ease just for a minute or two and wait for the rest of the senators to make their way to the chamber, and then we'll proceed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to let the members of the Transportation Committee know we will have a joint Transportation Committee at 1 o'clock in CLOB 506, 1 o'clock, and then we will have lunch provided in Chairman Tanner's office after the meeting. It should last about 20 to 30 minutes. Thank you.
Joint transportation meeting at 1 o'clock over in CLOB. And the other important detail was lunch was provided. Thank you, Senator. All right, the Senate will come back to order. We can ask that all senators come back to order. Senator from the 53rd came up with an idea last year. I tried to tell him that I've already had my glory days and I don't need to throw any more pitches. But he's got a great idea, and I threw a strike last year, so I'm thinking he wants to press our luck again and try it one more time. This brings back some old memories with that jersey you've got on there. All right, the chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd to get this thing rolling.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, if I was throwing, I would want Senator from the 31st to be right there so I could throw a curveball right over his head. But this building and this room is about traditions, and we started a new one last year to throw, for the Lieutenant Governor to throw the first pitch out on the last day. Him being a pitcher, starting with, in high school, the Georgia Tech, and later with the Florida Marlins. And every day he's throwing a strike in here too. So please give your attention to our Lieutenant Governor. And also, we have Hugh Chaplain from Georgia Tech. He's recently for Smyrna. He's got a great life ahead of him. Please give him a hand. And just like the movie, wait a minute. Huh? His nickname's Chappie, like the movie what's that good movie called? For the Love of the Game, that's right. All right, sit down.
That was an 0-2 high and tight pitch to you, brass. Thanks, man. Thank you. For some reason, that aisle looks a lot smaller on day 40 the last 2 years. All right, it's now time for our morning devotional. I ask that all senators take your seats, cease your all audible conversations, and I'd ask that our doorkeepers secure the doors. I get to lead us in our pledge again today and to introduce our chaplain of the day. If you will join me, stand, and let's pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. So a few days ago, I said that we had a familiar guest with us, a familiar chaplain, and Charles is back with us again today, and his message has always continued to be one that is inspiring and warming to all of us. And it's fitting that the Georgia Tech thing came up again today. But I'm certain we're breaking records, because I don't know if there's ever been the same chaplain 3 times in one session. Maybe there has, and somebody can scrub the books. But it is an honor to finish up this important day with a great friend of ours to lead us in our devotional of the day.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good morning. Lieutenant Governor, Mr. Secretary, Senators, it is always a privilege to be here. And I was recalling 2 years ago, my son Zach had the great privilege of serving as a page on Sine Die. It was being a long day, being an anticipated long day. I picked him up after school, or toward the end of school, dropped him off at the Capitol about 3:30 in the afternoon, and it seems a little weird to not have the pages sitting out back today. And he checked in, and he took his place among the pages that were seated in all the chairs that are just outside the chamber. And once I was sure it was settled in, it was a busy week. It was also Holy Week that year, and so it was Thursday, and then it was Maundy Thursday, so I had to head back to church to help lead a Maundy Thursday service. So I left him here, and he was a little apprehensive at first. It was a busy day at the Capitol that particular day, as it often is on Sine Die, and by the time I got back, he was absolutely in his rhythm. He was running messages in and out and having just the time of his life. And so I got back, and the rest of the evening, I split my time between being in the halls, visiting with friends, and spending some time up in the gallery, watching Zach as he would come in and out. And so many of you were here, and such a wonderful program, and just thank you again to all who were here and made that such an incredible experience for him. I'd grown up, I'm born and raised in Atlanta, native Georgian, and so all my life I'd watched the news, and I'd watched that final day, Sine Die, day 40 of the legislature, and then the gavels banging, and the Sine Die echoing through the chambers, and the confetti flying, and it was really just an incredible moment for me to be in the gallery. I made my way to the gallery about 11:30 to make sure I didn't miss the moment. I sat in the gallery, watched the final business of the Senate and the legislature conclude, and it was really special to watch that through my son's eyes. So the first time I got to experience it in person was his first time to experience that in person, and it was just an incredible moment as I saw him standing down here with just a grin on his face from ear to ear as the paper flew that night. It was even more special, if that can be possible, because as the clock struck midnight, as the gavel banged, as the confetti flew, it was also his birthday. That particular year, that next day was his birthday. And so it is a moment that he and I will both remember for the rest of our lives. And when I was preparing last night, we were talking about it. He's 16 now, and he just talked about what an awesome experience that was and how grateful he was for the opportunity. we all know that sine die means without day, and it's interesting when I looked up the more specific definition is without any future day being designated. And so it's an adjournment, and we know that we will come back together at some point, but we're not exactly sure when that will be. And certainly that has been the case in this legislative session. To say that it has been unusual would be an understatement. All of our lives have changed, and I'm sure sine die will look much different than it has in years past. In the church, the way that we conclude our time together, the way that we conclude our worship service is with a benediction. And a benediction is equal parts blessing and prayer and dismissal. And so it's that part of the service that many wait for. You know, there's the old joke about the son who's sitting in the church with his dad, and the preacher takes off his watch and he sits it up on the pulpit, and the son whispers up to his dad, "Dad, what does that mean?" And his father looks back down and said, "Absolutely nothing, son, absolutely nothing." Because preachers can get long-winded, but I won't today because I know it's your last day and y'all are all ready to be home. Many years ago, I was traveling on choir tour, and one of the traditions when we were on choir tours, we were asked to find a piece of scripture and leave it behind in a card for the family who were hosting us. We would travel, and the church we would perform at in the evening, they would host 2 or 3 of us. There would be families there to host 2 or 3 students, and they would take us all home. And that evening, I found a scripture that has become one that has become really my favorite scripture, the one that I use most often. It is a benediction from the book of Ephesians, from Paul's letter to the church in Ephesus. And it says this: "For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth takes its name, that according to the riches of his glory he may grant us all to be strengthened with his Spirit in the inner man, that Christ may dwell in our hearts through faith, that all of us, being rooted and grounded together in love, may have power to comprehend with all the saints what is the height and the width and the length and the depth, and to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge." And then this line is my favorite: "Now to him who, by the power at work within us, is able to accomplish far more abundantly all than we can ask or imagine, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus for this generation and all generations to come." And often when I'm preaching, that is one of the benedictions that I will use. It is one that is meaningful to me because it wraps up so beautifully our connection to one another. We're all connected. God created us all, and God created us to be in relationship with one another. And God's love can overcome so much, and God working through us has the ability to do far more than we could do on our own. I just want you to know that I will be praying for you throughout the day as you wrap up this legislative session, and more importantly, I'll be praying for you as you return to your homes and your communities in this disruptive session, in this disrupted year. I pray that your families will be safe and well, and that all will get back to, as I said in my remarks when we were together last Saturday, a preferred future. And so I'm gonna say that I'm gonna pray, but what I'm gonna do is, because I know that's part of it, I say that I'm gonna pray, and we all stand up. But this time, I hope that you will receive the benediction. First, I'm gonna read an Irish benediction, and then I'm going to recite the benediction that we usually closed UMYF with when I was a youth, and when I was in youth group many years ago. So will you pray with me, but will you receive this benediction today as we take leave? "May love and laughter light your days and warm your heart and home. May good and faithful friends be yours wherever you may roam. May peace and plenty bless your world with joy and that long endures. May all life's passing seasons bring the best to you and yours. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, and may the Lord bring us peace. Amen."
Are there any unanimous consents? Chair sees none. Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 21st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. Today's the last day for a few of our colleagues here, and I want to wish the senator from the 31st, the senators from the 41st, the senator from the 48th, the senator for the 3rd, the senator from the 23rd, the senator from the 45th, and the senator from the 50th. I want to wish you all well in your retirement, and I want to tell you what a pleasure it's been to serve with you. But today I come before you to take a moment to tell you about an individual that I've had the pleasure of sharing the Coverdale office suite with him the last 3 years. I've gotten to work with the senator from the 8th throughout my time here in the Senate, and I've seen firsthand his commitment to the people of District 8 and the state of Georgia. He's been one of, if not really the most fierce defender of public education we've had in this state, and I know that goes back to your days on the Board of Education, and we thank you for fighting for education, because when you peel the onion back, that's the success and the reason we're the #1 state to do business. You know, Ellis and I are very different in some ways. I come from Metro Atlanta, he comes from South Georgia. I'm an LSU fan, he's a Georgia Dogs fan. But those differences has never stopped Ellis from working with me for the benefit of the people of the state of Georgia. I'm thankful to have such a wonderful suite mate in Ellis and his beautiful wife, Athelia. And I know I will definitely feel your absence in the Gold Dome next session. I want to commend the senator from the 8th for his service and his commitment to the state of Georgia. And as chairman of the Retirement Committee, I want to wish you well in retirement. God bless you, Ellis. Thank you very much for your service.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today because on our consent calendar of privilege resolutions, you'll see a resolution recognizing June of 2020 as Immigrant Heritage Month. And I rise today. I was wanting to sign on that. And I know in the hustle and bustle of what happens in the last couple days here, things have to get dropped and they have to get done because we're all busy, and I get that. But I did want to rise today to acknowledge June 2020 as Immigrant Heritage Month. Immigrants in Gwinnett County make up such an important part of the fabric of our county. I just moved last week, as a lot of you guys know, and everybody said, well, where'd you move? And I said, well, I'm moved 2 miles down the road. I stayed in Lawrenceville because I love Lawrenceville. I love Gwinnett County. This is where I grew up. It's where my family grew up. I see myself as a Gwinnetian, as a Lawrencevillian, as somebody who is there, and I plan to be there for the rest of my life. Not a Lawrencevillian, Senator Brass. Up from the 28th, excuse me. But it's so important. We were riding over to the new house, making one of our many trips to move stuff, and my wife just looked at me and goes, I would never want to move from this place. I love it so much. There's so much, whether it's the complete variety of restaurants we have, whether it's the different perspectives that our immigrants bring. They're so important to our county, and I appreciate them so much, and I'm just honored to represent the 9th District. And thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I wanted to take a minute to flag for us the situation with our unemployment insurance PACE over at the Department of Labor, and urge you to help look for solutions. That department lost 49% of its workforce in the last 10 years through budget cuts. And probably everybody in here is hearing from constituents that are waiting just really horror stories of people that have been in the system trying to get their unemployment insurance started. And a thing that I urge us to look at is that unemployment check, we'd be real smart to put our shoulders to the wheel and figure out how to break through that logjam that's over there that's really a shortage of personnel to process the complicated claims. And we all know when an unemployment check gets issued, that money gets spent in our local economies that week, not next month or next year. And we've got this wonderful $600 additional federal check amount that's added to that weekly check. So you could easily say that somebody could get $1,000 a week with a good, robust unemployment check that includes these federal funds. Well, if we've got, I think the commissioner, when we talked to our budget committee, said there are about 30,000 complex claims that have got this or that snafu, and that they have to do them by hand. It's not, they can't just do them in bulk and run them through. And I have no doubt that they are working hard. They're working 7 days a week. The quicker we can get those checks moving through the system and moving into our economy, that's real dollars in our local economies. That means that rent gets paid. That means that light bill gets paid. That means the obligations that that family has to keep a roof over their head. The grocery store gets a good little bit of that money. But it's right back in our economies, and we're smart to understand that because that's just pure facts. And I was very heartened to learn that some other states, many states have the same problem, and we've gotten the A marks for many parts of what Commissioner Butler has done thus far in trying to cope with this tsunami of applicants in the middle of the pandemic. We actually could look at bringing the National Guard in to do data processing over there. In other words, augment our workforce on a temporary basis. Now, we've done it for the nursing homes because we all know the crisis there around the pandemic. And when I saw that other states have started doing this and breaking that logjam, I thought, well, this makes more sense than I can imagine. And they've done outstanding work. The Guard has done outstanding work. We got regular updates every week on that, and they continue to do it. And I would urge that we look at that, working with the DOL and the Commissioner, to see if we can't get that situation resolved to the benefit of all of us. Additionally, there are other things that we can move on to. My time's up, but we did pass HB 408, which put in a work share program that employers can voluntarily sign up for, and nobody's laid off. People share the work and work less time and get an unemployment check, and it's a federal unemployment check, 100% from now through the end of the year. So these are some things that I urge you all to take a look at and see what we can do to address the needs in our communities for the families and for the folks that get paid with that unemployment check. Thank you so much for your attention.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 1st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I usually don't come up here very much, and I strictly try not to. But I thought that the last day here, I would come up and sort of share with you some of the roles that we all play. As you know, the most important job in the world, from my perspective, is being a parent. And being a parent to what my wife and I have had is 3 sons. Having said that, it's the most important job in the world that we have, because when we leave here, that's what we'll leave. We'll leave our children, our genetic makeup, and it is the most important job that we have. It's the most challenging job, too, because in this COVID crisis, they are in their 20s now, so I don't have teenagers anymore. But, they do knucklehead things, and they get out and do things that they probably shouldn't be doing. That's part of the brain maturing. The frontal lobes are not fully developed till you're 25 or 26 years old from that perspective. So it puts us in a different perspective as a parent here. You know, we have another role here. It's important to know that as a husband, it is the fulfilling job that we have. You know, marriage is challenges, as everybody knows, but I've been very fortunate from that standpoint. And though I told my wife that it would have no effect on her when I ran for state senate, she has been there by me throughout this. She knew that when she was marrying a physician what that entailed, and the hours as a primary care physician and the support that she has done. You know, here as a state senator and as a physician, though, that is the reason I came up here, because we all wear that hat also. We all have our occupation. We all have our what we do here in the state senate as a state senator. And when it's come to the COVID-19 pandemic that we've had, you know, I had to go look up that word again, pandemic meaning all over the world, not just localized to southeastern United States or the state of Georgia or Savannah, Georgia, my area. But it has been something that has been life-changing. My grandmother lived through the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. She had Spanish flu. Fortunately, she lived to be in her 90s and died in the 1990s. Over 650,000 people died of the Spanish flu in a population of America of 100 million people. Over 650,000 Americans died. So you can imagine the damaging effects that it had on our society at that time. Of course, none of us here remember that, and it is interesting to note that this will be something that hopefully we'll be able to look back on and say, you know, how this affected us. So how has it affected us? It has affected us in profound ways. I must say that it is important to note, and I'll end on this, is that we all know about the social distancing. We know about people sneezing and coughing, but we don't really appreciate the 5 microns that comes out when we breathe and the proximity that's related to that. So wear your mask, be smart. It is not for you when you do that. It is for others. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator, I want to take a moment to thank you, too, for your guidance through the last 3 thank you for your service and your sacrifice for all of us. Thank you. Chair recognizes the Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I feel that I would be remiss if I did not come up here and express my appreciation to so many people who have done so much for me. Like I did the other day, I guess I kind of think about things in 3. So I'll tell you 3 things I thought about this morning. First of all, I thought about the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes. And to paraphrase, of course, in our lives, there's a time for everything and a season for everything. And I want all of you to know that I've really enjoyed the past 9 years. Second thing I thought about, now my roommate's not in here, so maybe he'll be hearing this somewhere, but he's great on all the movies and the quotations from all the movies, and I'm not. But I thought about one of them from the movie Hope Floats, which says beginnings are usually scary, endings are usually sad, but it's what happens in the middle that counts. And I've had a great run, and I'd like to thank all of you for the part that you played in that, and I'd like to thank the Lord for giving me the health. I've not missed a day in 9 years, and that's a real blessing, and I know that the Lord's blessed me with that. So I know I made some mistakes, but I have showed up every day. Some days it was easier than others. And then the other thing I thought about, you know, it's hard to get to a point like this without being a little bit sad, but I heard someone say, I've heard people say, well, you can decide whether you want to be sad that it's ending or you want to be happy that you had the opportunity. And I was really blessed to have the opportunity, and I'm just going to be real happy today that I had the opportunity. the primary reason I came up here is to say thank you to some people, and I'm not going to call out a lot of individuals, and I know it's easy to leave people out, and I'm sure I will today, but I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor and his staff for the great job that they do and the hard work that they do. I want to thank, I may not be supposed to call him by name, but I guess what are y'all going to do, fire me? But I want to thank David Cook. He's been a great help to me over the past 9 years in his office, the Secretary of the Senate's office. We're very blessed to have a person in that position that is as conscientious and cares as much as he does. I'd like to thank all the people that have helped me in the Senate press, sitting back there, the Senate research, Ledge Council, Ryan Miller, who's my legislative assistant, all the great legislative assistants that I've had over the years. I've been really blessed in that regard. I did think about in that Hope Floats quote when it talked about beginnings are scary and endings are sad. Probably the scariest part of my service as a state senator has been having the senator from the 53rd as my roommate. But that's just a side note. So in conclusion, I just want to thank all of you. I know this has already been said. We talk about a fraternity or sorority. I like to think about the brotherhood of mankind. But this is a very special brotherhood. And I want to thank all of you in those seats and maybe those that are listening that I had the opportunity to be a part of this brotherhood. And those of you that are going to remain here, I pray God's blessing on you and that he'll grant you wisdom and the good health to be here, and I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you.
Senator, I'd like to thank you personally for your friendship and for your service. You've represented your district extremely well. No doubt you'll get some deserved rest, but I would be careful sharing outside of this building that the senator from the 53rd was your roommate. Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This body was so kind to me Wednesday, and yesterday I said I ain't gonna go down there. They didn't have enough of me, but I had a couple of people chastise me because I didn't come down to personal privilege yesterday and talk. They said, "Well, you're the oldest person in the body. You need to go down and relay some wisdom to all these." And so I'll play the old coot that's going to be talking to the young folks about some things that I've seen, because one of the things that weighs heavy on me is we're quick to identify ourselves with labels: Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, and a number of others. But I think it would be wise to be real cautious with this, because in my lifetime I have seen these classifications evolve considerably. When I come of age, the Democrats were the more conservative, and the Republicans were more liberal. I can still hear my daddy cussing them New York Republicans like Nelson Rockefeller. And I have seen the state of Georgia evolve. In 1960, the first time I went to the polls to vote for president, John Kennedy was running against Richard Nixon. And one of the ironies is those platforms that both of them ran on was almost identical. And when the vote was cast, Georgia had given John F. Kennedy the highest percentage of vote of any state in the nation, much higher than his home state of Massachusetts. And like I said, all of these things have evolved, and I think that you will see them continue to evolve. when I was at the University of Georgia in 1962, a senator from Arizona came and spoke about being a conservative. At that day and time, being called a conservative was an insult. But the man stood up there and he talked about white-hot victory and conscience of a conservative. And what he had to say resonated well with me, and I went out and bought his books and bought into what he was preaching. And today, Barry Goldwater would be considered a rhino. Things are ever changing, and those that adapt survive. The ones that don't go into extinction. With that said, I got one other thing that I got to recognize. Just a couple of people. I can't begin to sit here and recognize the folks that I'm really the closest to and everything. But we sit in this chamber and we get close to certain people because we work on committees with them. Our districts are in the same area. There's a number of factors that bring us together. But each one of us sits here and looks at everybody else around, and so many of them that we're not on committees. We don't share that committee with them. We're not in close proximity with our districts, and we don't interact with them to establish a relationship like we do some of the others. But we see things in them that resonates with us. And there's a couple of heroes that I want to recognize. And the first is the senator from the 16th. He comes from one of the most conservative districts in this state. And from what I've seen, the connections I've had with him, I think he is very much in tune with the political philosophy of his constituents. But over the years, we've had a number of very conservative Republicans up here. I mean, just as conservative as he is. But so many of them have been so abrasive with their politics and the way they promoted things that I actually think they was doing more harm to their cause than they were doing good. But this man, he has been extremely polished, and he has got the kind of personality that can move the needle. And this fella, it's got to be recognized for that. There's another gentleman that I want to call a hero, and he sits right behind me. And this is the senator from the 26th over there. And he and I, I'm going to tell you right now, we all know that the senator from Macon can get out there in the weeds on some stuff. But I'm going to tell you something. If you think that, you should have seen him in the house. I'm going to tell you something. When he was in the House, his district was to Hood in Macon, Georgia. Now, he still got to Hood and Macon, but he goes out to some of the smaller counties down in southeast Macon. And it's been reflected in his politics. And I think that if you don't do anything else when you look around here, you need to respect people that are representing their district. And I certainly got to recognize my sweet man. He was so kind a while ago to me, and it's been a blessing. But it's been an honor for me to be here with y'all. And I do thank every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Senator, and your friendship. Chair recognizes
Thank you, Mr. President. Gosh, those are so emotional and so eloquent. There's no way I can be that eloquent, but I'll try. But it is very sentimental to be here. And someone asked me, how does it feel, Renee? And I said, well, I'm kind of like a bird out of a cage. I'm getting to be able to fly, and it's a wonderful thing. The other thing is I don't have to be politically correct anymore. Not that I ever was very much, but I don't have to be anymore, and it's a wonderful feeling. So I want to tell you this story. And the story is, in our Republican caucus, we usually have a dinner the night before on day 39 or 38, and we give gag gifts, and some of my gag gifts are back there on the table. But the best gag gift I ever got was a couple years ago. And of course, you know who gave me that gag gift. The senator from Chickamauga. The Rules Committee chairman gave me that gift. So I want to tell you what I'm going to do since I'm going to be not elected anymore after 32 years. The gift came in a box, and the caucus already knows about this. It came in a box. And it was sterling silver balls. And it was 2 balls that had a chain over the top of it. So I knew you would appreciate that, the senator from 48, because we like that, don't we? So I took those balls home, and I put them in a drawer, and I locked them away. Well, guess what I'm going to do now? I'm going to pull those suckers out. I'm going to put them on my F-250, and y'all are going to be seeing me driving over the hills and the mountains of North Georgia when I'm retired, and I'm going to be so proud of those things because I never got to take them out. And I'm so glad to be able to take them out. But I do want to tell you, my story is about, you've heard those Hallmark cards, and it's called Footprints in the Sand. And it's just an honor to be able to be represented for so long, to be from Gwinnett County. And Gwinnett County, as you know, when I grew up, was such a small county. And to think now that it's over 1 million people, almost 1 million, and to see the diversity and where we've come, and for 32 years to be a part of that leadership has just been an incredible experience, because it's like you're looking through a periscope and you're just seeing history march on. And when I think about my term here in the Senate, I think about some of the most historic votes and those footprints in the sand that I've seen. And I'll never forget being called downstairs to the governor's office. And it was when I served in the House. And Governor Barnes called me down there, and I love Governor Barnes. And he called me down there, and he put me in his big old rocking chair because he knew they'd make me feel good. And I already knew what I was going to do when I walked in that room. But I also knew what else I was going to do to get out of him. And it was when the Georgia flag was being changed and the Confederate emblem was being taken off the flag, and it was very, very controversial. And I sat down in that chair, and he said, Renee, I need your vote. And I said, well, you don't have my vote. Well, Renee, I need your vote. And I said, well, you just don't have it. You know, I represent a very conservative district, and you just don't have it. Well, Renee, what do I have to do to give you to get your vote? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, you know what I need? I need a senior center in Loganville, Georgia. He said, you got it. You got it right now. You go upstairs and you vote for that. And I said, yes, sir, I will. And guess what? That senior center has done more for that community. Thousands of people over the last 20 years have been through that senior center. They never had anything before. They have a place to eat. They pay $1 for a lunch every day. It would be food that they would not have gotten, nutritious food. And when I fast forward and look at that vote on the Confederate flag, and I look at what passed here just a few days ago with the hate crimes bill, I could not be prouder to be able to sit in here and watch those footprints in the sand and look at the evolution and look at the governors that have come and gone since I've been here. Look at the state of Georgia and our prosperity and being the #1 state to do business. It's just phenomenal, and it is overwhelming. But there is a few people that I want to talk about. I do want to talk about the people that are never talked about when people think about going away. And I often make fun of the lobbyists, and I love the lobbyists, and they are the subject matter experts, and I respect them, and I appreciate everything that they have given me as far as knowledge and being able to get bills through. But the other group is the advocacy groups, the groups that never get paid, the nonprofits, the volunteers, the grassroots, who stand up for the causes that are the least of these, whether it's the developmental disabilities, whether it's suicide prevention, foster care, Alzheimer's, every kind of malady in the world that you can think of, diabetes, cardiovascular, you know, the list goes on and on and on. And what really gives the strength and keeps this gold dome, the roof of this building, alive, to me, is those advocates and those nonprofits that make Georgia. You can talk about the business community all you want that makes Georgia so great, but to me, it's those social services and those people who represent those special interest groups of the disadvantaged. That, to me, is what makes the strength. The other thing I wanted to just talk about is the safety net. And if there's one legacy in this room that I hope that you will leave, that I am leaving with you, is protection of that safety net and protecting those most vulnerable citizens. And when you look and see who they are, it is the mental health community. It is the behavioral health. I remember going to Milledgeville, Georgia, when we were closing and deinstitutionalizing the behavioral health system in the state of Georgia. And I remember going to Milledgeville and going down to the basement of the main building at Milledgeville. Milledgeville has over 2,000 acres. And going down to the basement and seeing the old shackles on the wall and seeing the isolation rooms and seeing the concrete beds where people who were literally labeled as crazy were put into those rooms. And it was basically like a dungeon. And seeing that building closed and watching the morphosis of the deinstitutionalization of people who desperately need help. When I was growing up, my mother always said, you better behave or else you're going to Milledgeville. And to see what Georgia has done with that deinstitutionalization and taking care of people with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, people with mental health problems, that is the true safety net. And I hope and know that you are going to protect it just as we have in the state budget and helping them. So with that, I'm going to close out. I just want to say thank you to David Cook. Oh my gosh, that man has put up with me. I'll never forget him calling me in Walmart. I was shopping in Walmart. He said, Senator, we're going to move your office. I went ballistic. I said, what do you mean you're going to move my office? Everybody in Walmart knew about the state capitol. He said, we got to move you. I think I've been in every office downstairs and upstairs and on Capitol Hill. And God bless David Cook. If it were not for his dedication, his effectiveness, and before him, Bob Ewing did a great job. But David Cook, I've seen a lot of secretaries in the House and in the Senate. David Cook has been phenomenal. I want to thank the administrative assistants. A lot of times people don't remember or think about them and what they do. I encourage you to go to their Christmas party every year and support them and give them the morale boost that they need. We have phenomenal ancillary staff here in the State Senate. You know who you are, whether it's Senate Research or Senate Budget. We've had a lot of people come and go, but they are the ones that make these senators sitting in the 56 seats be successful, and I appreciate them. The other people I'd like to thank, in particular, over the years, I've seen a lot of controversy here in the state capitol, whether it was about abortion, immigration, very, very volatile issues. And who keeps the sanity here, who keeps the calmness, is the Georgia State Capitol Police and also the State Patrol. I appreciate them more than they probably know, because over the years I've carried a lot of controversial bills, and no matter how controversial they were, I always knew they had my back, and I know that they know that I have their back. So with that, there's one other person I'd like to thank, is Eric Johnson. He was my first president pro tem. He taught me so much. And y'all think that the senator from the 26th has been pretty wild. You didn't see me when I came in this body, and Eric Johnson had to tame a wild horse, and he did a pretty good job at it. Closing out, I want to thank the pro-life community. When I look back on some of the most historic bills that I've had a part of, the pro-life community is phenomenal in the state of Georgia. They have the courage, they have the beliefs, they have the stamina and the perseverance to carry a message. And I never could have been your messenger if you had not helped me. And I want to say thank you for protecting the unborn. The last thing is a constitutional amendment that most of the people sitting in this room helped me with. I know the senator from the 31st, the senator from the 3rd, the list goes on and on and on. The senators that have helped pass what I think is one of the most constructive bills that came through here in my time is the constitutional amendment protecting children from child sex trafficking. And there's been a lot of you in here that helped. And it's just phenomenal work, and we've accomplished so much. So with that, Lieutenant Governor, President of the Senate, I know you and I had a rocky road when I came in here, but by golly, we have a friendship and a bond that will last a lifetime. I respect you. I admire you. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. And also the governor of the state of Georgia, Brian Kemp, I appreciate everything that he's done for me. And with that, I will yield, and I know I went over my minutes. And thank you very much. I appreciate everything.
Thank you, Senator, for your service, and thank you for your friendship. Chair recognizes the senator from the 40th for a point of personal privilege.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I rise today to commemorate John Bullock Day in the Georgia Senate. I do have my blue jeans on, but I'm not here to talk about wearing blue jeans. I'm here to talk about my friend, John Bullock. Now, how do I know John Bullock, since I was just elected to the Senate in 2018? Well, John Bullock and I were seatmates in the Georgia House. And John made sure I voted with the farmers on every farming vote. He taught me about the business of cotton farming. He taught me about pecan farming. So I want to tell you a little John Bullock story, because something happened to me after I served my first term in the Georgia House. I got pregnant. Now, back then, only about 20% of the legislature was women. And no female legislator had ever had a baby before while serving. It was the first time. Now, I didn't plan the timing very well, because my due date was January 1, year 2000. Well, you know, that's right before the session starts, right? Okay, so my baby was to be 3 weeks old when the session started. I realized that if I took a maternity leave, I'd miss the whole session. Well, I couldn't do that. I was elected to represent my voters. Then I realized no daycare center would take a baby that's 3 weeks old. So I worked things out with the speaker to bring my baby with me. It wasn't easy. to work that out, but we worked it out. And I talked to my seatmate about it, and I said, well, John, I'm going to breastfeed my baby. I was the executive director of the Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies Coalition of Georgia. We advocated for breastfeeding. I couldn't not breastfeed. And John's face, you should have seen it. He said, well, you know, Sally, there are things you can do about that now. I'm like, what do you mean, John? He goes, well, you know, those little pump things, you can do that. I'm like, no. I said, my baby's going to be with me. Do you realize it would take twice the time to pump and then feed my baby? No, John, I'm going to breastfeed my baby. Well, it wasn't so easy. It was my first baby. The first weeks, there was a committee chairman, Representative Roger Byrd, if you remember that, and if you remember him, he offered his office for me to go to when I needed to change diapers or nurse. And so I used that office for a while, but then I realized, well, I got better at the breastfeeding, but I realized I was missing votes, and I didn't want to miss votes. So I just quietly started breastfeeding right there in the chamber. And John sat next to me, and that man made that possible because he protected me, and he supported me. Because it was a scary thing to do. I didn't realize it was a courageous thing to do at the time. I just had to do what I needed to do. But I was able to do it because John was my seatmate. So he gave me a gift I wanted to show you that year. And it's this little pair of overalls that have my son's initials on it, 6-month size. Well, these don't fit my son anymore. My son grew taller than me several years ago. He's 20 now, and he does not like me to tell this story, by the way. But I just wanted to stand up here on John Bullock Day in the Georgia Senate and say, thank you, John Bullock. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 14th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin by congratulating the senator from the 16th for our administrative assistant who got married just this last weekend. She took some time and went away to be with her new husband up on in camp and got married. So we want to let Jenna know how we're proud of her, how she's continued to serve while still trying to be engaged. But really the reason I'm here is I rise today to discuss an incredible hypocrisy that exists. You see, it's no more evident than the handling of the Brooks case. Are you listening has become a statement or a question used on a regular basis. It's become a justification for peaceful protests and not so peaceful protests. The answer is yes, we are listening, and you've got our attention. I'd now ask you the same question. Are you listening? Are you listening to the false statements and a narrative that is so divisive to the very cause of unity and equality? Of course, George Floyd's case was wrong. He should have never died. There's no one that will disagree with that. But let's examine the Brooks case for just a second. We heard he was a peaceful individual doing nothing wrong right from this podium. But let's examine it. Seriously? Public drunkenness? I guess that's not against the law. DUI? So you can be in your car, drunk behind the wheel, DUI. How about driving through a business and blocking entrance? Or better yet, how about this? He stole a taser, a felony. I'm not dismissing that he died. and every life counts. We talked about that. We said God set this in beginning, that every life matters, and we are all created in His image. But we should not rush to judgment, we're told. Well, how about our first responders and law enforcement? Were they given the same respect? The mayor and the DA rushed to judgment. Every day, regardless of the skin color of our law enforcement and first responders, they put their life on the line for each and every one of us. Now let's address an issue that was brought up by the senator from the first, the pandemic. I find it incredibly hypocritical that protesters were not held accountable for social distancing and wearing masks, and yet now we have a rise in the number of cases. I find it hypocritical that we're going to attack our law enforcement and reprimand them and our administrative staff for not following most, if not all, the guidelines. Let me tell you, we stand for fairness and equality, but that applies to all, not just a select few. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a little sad today as I rise because in contrast to the other chamber, which has had a lot of people leave and a lot of change over the last few years, our chamber has remained relatively stable, and I'm someone who is a little bit nostalgic and kind of doesn't really like change, so I really hate it that this many people are leaving us, especially all at one time. So I just wanted to come say a few things about you. Senator from the 45th, I love your spunk and your determination, and I love, it's so great how much you relish a fight. I enjoy that about you. But your legacy will mostly be all of the extremely hard work that you did as chair of Health and Human Services. I sat on a panel with you one time where you really could have rattled off maybe 30 bills at that time and the nuances of all those issues, but I know it could have been 100 bills. You worked very hard as a chairwoman, and your work on that and sex trafficking will be your legacy down here. Senator from the 48th, I love your exuberance. You are just exuberant, you love life, you do not have a mean thought in your head. And you've been with us too short, and I'm gonna miss you like crazy, and I hope you come back someday. We make fun of you for your fiscal note questions, but your astute legal mind has caught a number of things, and it's certainly been a help to me, and I think to this chamber for the last 2 years. Senator from the 23rd has stepped out, but I wanna thank him as Judiciary Chairman. There are a couple of senators on Judiciary, Senator from the 3rd is another one, who, you know what, they're very calm. They bring astute legal minds to the issues. In fact, the senator from the 23rd, I rarely see his demeanor change much at all. And you know what? That's actually a comfort to me because I inherited my dad's temper. So I strive to be a little more like our calm legislators, like the senator from the 23rd. And he talked yesterday about wisdom and justice and moderation, and he really has embodied those things. He's calmly worked through the issues, the hundreds of bills like in health that face his committee. I can tell how hard he's worked on all of those. I can tell how he's read them all. That is no small feat, and I want to thank him for that work. I am distressed that he is no longer going to be chairman of that important committee. I'm going to miss him a lot. The senator from the 8th and the senator from the 50th, it was mentioned that both of you are stalwart public education advocates. I have noticed that over the years, and that has meant so much to me. I appreciate the perspective from your rural districts. I was in the House very briefly with you, Senator, from the 8th, but I've loved serving with you in the Senate, and all of you really, because our chamber is smaller, and you can see the light from within each person shine through in this chamber the way you can't so much over there. And being able to have a contact with each of you and develop a relationship has meant a lot to me. And your good heart and your experience has taught me a lot of valuable things down here. And Senator from the 50th, I'm going to really miss your sense of humor very much. We all knew you weren't quite wild or crazy enough to come out on top in that primary. I wish one of you had won the primary, God knows, but probably all of you were too sane to have emerged out of a congressional primary, sad to say. That may be why some of us don't ever run for higher office, because we'd rather make friends and do some work. But the next time we see each other, I want to know where I need another squishy donkey. I was the recipient of a squishy donkey from the senator from the 50th. He got it somehow, and he thought of me to give it to. And I have it in my office. I'm very, very proud of it, and I'm hoping that he'll give me another one someday. I know both of your families, Senator from the 50th and 8th, will be delighted to have you back home. And the Senator from the 31st, see, every chamber, every legislative chamber should have a curmudgeon who also, at times, wears his heart on his sleeve. And I don't know who's going to take his place. We have a gaping hole in not having ready to go a curmudgeon that wears his heart on his sleeve, his big heart on his sleeve. So we'll see if anyone can rise to fill those big shoes. I'm not sure they can. And the senator from the 3rd, I already mentioned, you're another lawyer that I really respect for being, so conscientious in your beliefs, and we've disagreed, but just like the senator from the 23rd, you're always calm. And I really strive to be more like you. I think I'm doing a little better as I now enter my 8th year as a legislator, just a little bit. But that legacy, I'll be thinking of you lawyers, and how you disagree without being disagreeable. Really, you do, William. And you've served your constituents very well too, and I'll miss you on judiciary. Have I gotten everybody? Because my last one is, of course, the senator from the 41st. So I met Steve when, in 2009, I came down here as a Senate aide, and I worked for David Edelman, who was then the senator from the 42nd. And I came because I wanted to move my legal career away from litigation and more toward public policy. But I was pretty young and very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and really in awe of everything that was happening down here. And David said to me before we started the session, he said, we share an office suite with Steve Henson, the senator from the 41st, and he's a great guy. And so I came down, and what I remember most from that session are really 3 things. I remember that the legislature passed the CWIP Vogel bill that year, which has sort of stayed with us over the course of the intervening 11 years. I remember that Kasim Reed was the senator from the 35th, and he was launching his campaign for mayor. And I remember getting to know Steve. And when I decided that I was going to launch, I had no expectation of doing that when I came down here in 2009. But I started opening my big mouth, and before you know it, in April of 2009, I'm launching a campaign for the State House that I eventually won. Well, Steve, I relied on from the very beginning. And now, I really can't imagine a caucus without Steve. I'm actually really scared of it. Steve's wisdom, his institutional knowledge, his love for everybody, his ability to see the good in all people, his ability to pull us all together, his ability to be very calm, unlike me again. Sometimes I think he's too nice, actually. Some of my battles with him over the last few years have been that I think he's just being flat out too nice. But it is a very big hole having some of our longtime legislators leave us. Senator from the 45th, senator from the 8th, senator from the 41st. People have been here a really long time. And I like to think that the comedy that we all have here, that I do have affection for every single one of you. I really, really do. And I'd like to say that I hope I see you again. And I would be delighted to share a cordial with any of you at any time. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hopefully this will be the last time you'll have to listen to me today. But I wanted to step up here and thank the individuals who have helped me during these past 2 years that will not be here next year. And briefly, there's one person I need to focus on, but one person I really want to thank is the minority leader, who when I first got in here looked at me as if I were some kind of landmine and he was trying to avoid me. Until he realized a common relationship between a friend of his that came in the same time he did, that is also a dear friend of mine, and that was a former senator and I believe President Pro Tem Pete Robinson. And so, and once that ice got broken, we had the opportunity to become good friends. But my focus here is on the senator from the 8th. Sitting next to him in retirement taught me more than I thought I already knew. I had had the opportunity to sit down with Secretary Chow when she was over labor in D.C., and I thought I knew quite a bit, but the senator taught me that I didn't know as much as I thought I did. The ability he gave me to become involved in the high school sports with his petitioning our lieutenant governor for considering me to move into a seat that is extremely important to our students throughout the state and to the sports in our high schools throughout the state. But mostly, there are a segment of our society that believes one day the earth will be invaded by individuals from outer space. And I watched Star Trek growing up as a child, and I heard how Klingons spoke. And if we are ever invaded by Klingons, I will not be able to speak to them, but I will be able to understand them. So thank you, Mr. Senator, for everything you've done for me, and Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Well done. Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. This will hopefully be brief. Definitely start the timer, because if I get to rambling, I want this red light to come on. But thankfully, yesterday I was not here when many of you were speaking highly of senators that were leaving, and I thank you for those kind words. If there were any kind words for me, I certainly didn't. There was one, thank you. You know, I sat back there, and this is not my style. I think those of you who know me, I can get provoked pretty easy, and I get emotional. All I want to say is I appreciate y'all. There's probably no one in this room or who has been in this room that served with me that haven't had some tense words with. I take pride in being different. That's not always good, but I do take pride in being different. And I don't mind scrapping with you, but I do love you. And thank you.
Thank you, Senator. You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before. Is there objection to the adoption of the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
Senate Resolution 1049 by Senator James of the 35th and others. Resolution Pastor Angela E. Camoni on their 25th wedding anniversary and for other purposes.
Chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption on the next resolution.
Senate Resolution 1050 by Senator James of the 35th and others. A resolution honoring the life and memory of James Edward Friend, Jr. and for other purposes.
Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd for a motion.
Mr. President, I would move that the Senate disagree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to House Bill 365.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill 365 by Representative Blackman of the 146th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5C of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to alternative ad valorem taxes on motor vehicles so as to lower the tax rate imposed and for other purposes. That completes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to speak to his motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've got a bill that I'm really, in full transparency, trying to get our food banks taken care of that got sidetracked on some sales tax exemptions to lend on Tuesday, as well as our study only that we're trying to do on these tax credits. And so I'm just trying to move this bill forward just for those two purposes only and take care of it. So I would appreciate your favorable consideration.
You have no questions. Senator from the 52nd has moved that the Senate disagree to the House amendment to the Senate substitute to House Bill 365. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and the Senate has disagreed. Chair recognizes the senator from Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd.
I was planning my vacation.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 664 be.
Mr. Secretary, can you please read the caption?
House Bill 664 by Representative Fleming of the 121st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 23 of Title 47, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to the Georgia Judicial Retirement System so as to require membership in the system for certain persons employed in certain full-time positions requiring admission to the State Bar of Georgia as a condition of employment and for other purposes. That completes the order.
Senator from the 3rd has moved that House Bill 664 be taken from the table. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so. Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4 allows the attorneys in Legislative Council to move into the judicial retirement and for retention purposes, and also when one of our attorneys leaves, it will be used as a tool to recruit attorneys who have more experience, who've been practicing for a while, and I think it would be something that we need. As you know, The services of legislative counsel is critical for the functioning of this body as well as the House, and we need to do all that we can to give them the tools that they need to retain our experienced attorneys and also to recruit some of the top talent. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the chairman yield?
Yes.
First question, is there a fiscal impact?
There's a slight one to the employee retirement system, like $26,000 according to the fiscal note.
And is that for 1 year? Or?
1 year.
Okay. My second question is, I understand...
Can you hold on for one moment,
sorry.
Senator? We continue to deliberate very serious matters in this chamber. I would ask that all senators move your conversations into the anterooms and allow the senator in the well to present the bill and the senators on the floor to ask the questions. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, sir. Do you further yield?
Yes.
Are there other attorneys for the state of Georgia that are also have been put into this judicial retirement system, such as the Attorney General's office?
No. No, I don't know if they're already in that, but this is just for legislative counsel. It does not apply to any other attorneys that may be working for the state of Georgia.
Further clarification?
Yes.
My question is, I understand we're trying to attract people to legislative counsel's office.
Right.
Have we done the same thing for example, the Attorney General's office or the General Counsel of the Secretary of State's office or any other lawyers in that kind of capacity?
I'm not aware, since I've been here, I'm not aware of that.
Thank you, sir.
You have no additional questions.
Mr. President, I ask for everyone's favorable support, and I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 664? The chair sees none. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Getting a thumbs up from the hallway. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 48, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th for a motion.
Mr. President, I move that House Bill 292 be taken from the table.
Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
House Bill 292 by Representative Benton of the 31st, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 21 of Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the general provisions for the Regents Retirement Plan so as to eliminate certain remittances required to be made by the University System of Georgia to the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement recommends that this bill do pass. Senator Black of the 8th District Chair. That completes the order.
Senator from the 20th has moved that House Bill 292 be taken from the table. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is removed from the table. The chair recognizes the senator from the 20th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 290 closed dispute between the teacher's retirement system with regard to employees that were allowed in 1990 to make a one-time irrevocable switch to the Regents optional retirement plan. So employees of the University System of Georgia were given an option in 1990 to switch over to this new retirement plan. The University System of Georgia was required to fund TRS and made payments to TRS for the unaccrued liability for those members from 1991 through 2001. They have not made any payments since 2001, and there's been an Attorney General letter or determination that no further payments are due from USG or to the TRS, and this bill just codifies that. I'd be happy to answer any questions. If there aren't any, I ask for your favorable support of this measure.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th for a question.
Does the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Senator, is it not true that the retirement system in Georgia, the contributions to that system vary from year to year depending on the return on investments of those funds in the retirement fund?
Yes, sir. My understanding is we have to appropriate the funds to both the ORP or the optional retirement plan and TRS. So it's taxpayer funded retirement plans. So it's kind of like arguing over which pot of money you're going to fund. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Is it not true after that letter was written that these funds were appropriated to the university system for payments into these funds, but those funds were never transferred to TRS? Is that not true?
I noticed in the budget we passed yesterday, we still have appropriations coming from USG into TRS, and my understanding is that is for the employees of the University System of Georgia that continued to participate in TRS. I'm not familiar with what you're asking about. You probably know more about this than I do, to be honest.
I think we have taken testimony. Excuse me. Is it true? Does the senator further yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that the Senate committee has heard these arguments before? And even though a letter was written from the Attorney General's office saying at that time those investments, there was no further need for contribution from the university system, that the change in the financial conditions brought about changes on return on investment, which in fact those employees that stayed under TRS continued to, their retirement needed to be funded, and there was a deficit in that after the Attorney General's opinion.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is the employees of the University System of Georgia that are still part of TRS, the University System of Georgia we are still appropriating money for them to pay the required contributions for those employees. This is, can I? So the university system paid this through 2001, and at that point there was an actuarial study done that said that the TRS obligation from the University System of Georgia was fulfilled. I mean, the TRS was fully funded, the actuarial liability had been paid, and so they have not remitted any payments to this for those employees that switched over, and of course that was 30 years ago. There's a dwindling number of those employees that are, still alive or still getting retirement, but they had fulfilled their obligation and they haven't made a payment since 2001. And what this is simply doing is just resolving the issue Unfortunately, when the legislation was passed in 1990, there was no provision to finalize this arrangement. It was not crafted well, and it was just kind of an open-ended situation, and we're trying to resolve this. Again, it's money that this body has to appropriate every year, and it's just a matter of whether we put it in ORS or TRS. If TRS runs a deficit, we're going to have to appropriate money to shore it up. Or if the optional retirement plan runs a deficit, we're going to have to appropriate money to shore that up. So it's taxpayer dollars. It's just a matter of what pot you put it in.
Does Senator further yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that funds were given to the university system on their earning sheets for this, which in fact were not transferred into TRS?
I don't know about that, Senator.
Is it not
I'm
true
sure you
that
know of what you speak, but I don't know.
Is it not true that I would urge the Senate and would move that this issue be tabled, because I do believe that there are still unanswered questions on this, and there's definitely a difference of opinion as to the latent liabilities in TRS for those members who are from represents the school teachers in the state of Georgia, and I will promise you that it requires contributions each year, both from the individuals and the school districts for which they work. Thank you very much.
Senator, you have no more questions.
Thank you. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th to speak to the measure.
Let me just add a little bit of clarity to the issues that was raised by the senator from the 37th. He's exactly right. Sometime back here in the past, we put money in the budget for the regents for them to make this payment. They turned around and used it as part of their budget cut. There was across the board cuts, and they didn't pay the regents. And then they have not paid since. But this all boils down to taking money out of one pocket, putting it over to the other. This is going to have to be paid. It was proposed by our former appropriations chairman that we appropriate the money to the regents and let them pay but the regents in the governor's office didn't want to have nothing to do with that. Their people got up and walked out of the meeting. And so the governor wants this obligation taken off the regents. It ain't going to make any difference one way or the other. However, I do think that you need to be aware that there's money in the budget to make this payment, and I would like to think the governor will line out and veto that, because if we pass this, there shouldn't be any money paid. That's where we stand with this. You vote your conscience. Thank you.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any of the senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair sees none. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. For what purpose does the senator from the 37th rise?
Would move this matter be tabled, House Bill 292.
Made a motion that House Bill 292 be placed on the table. All those in favor of the motion vote. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of the motion will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. For what purpose does the senator from the 20th rise?
Mr. President, isn't it to resolve this matter once and for all, and that it's just state appropriated? I mean, taxpayer funded either way, and we're going to fund both retirement plans. It doesn't hurt the TRS system.
I believe the senator has spoken with great passion about the issue. For what purpose does the senator from the 48th rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Isn't it true that it's unclear here as to who owes what? To whom?
Each and every senator can determine that on their own. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Thumbs up in the hallway. Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the motion to table, the yeas are 19, the nays are 32, and the motion is lost. Is there objection or agree in the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, please close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 32, the nays are 19. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes the majority leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that Senate Rule 4-2.9 be suspended to take HB 1020 from the table.
Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
House Bill 1020 by Representative Gravely of the 67th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to driver's licenses so as to provide for license suspension for conviction of drug-related offenses and for other purposes. That completes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the majority. The majority leader has moved that the Senate suspend the rules and to take HB 1020 from the table. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is taken from the table. Mr. Secretary, please read the caption.
House Bill 1020 by Representative Gravely of the 67th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5, Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, relating to driver's licenses so as to provide for license suspension for conviction of drug-related offenses, to provide for conditions for reinstatement of such suspended licenses, to reduce the number of required hours and intervention component of DUI, alcohol, or drug use risk reduction programs, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety recommends this bill do pass by substitute. Senator Albers of the 56th District Chair. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute to House Bill 1020, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to motor vehicles and traffic so as to reduce the number of required hours in the intervention component of DUI, alcohol, and drug use risk reduction programs, to allow licensed driver training schools to conduct on-the-road testing, to provide for eligibility for limited driving permits, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Harbin of the 16th and others offer the following amendment to the Senate Committee substitute of the bill by replacing line 2 with the following: traffic, so as to repeal a provision relating to storage of a unlicensed vehicle to reduce the number of required hours in the intervention component of DUI, and for other purposes. That completes the order.
For what purpose does the senator from the 16th rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Would this be the appropriate time to ask for unanimous consent to remove this amendment number 1?
This would be the appropriate time to make that motion.
I would like to make that motion, sir.
Senator from the 16th has asked for unanimous consent that his amendment number 1 be withdrawn. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and amendment number 1 is withdrawn. Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd to present the House bill.
Mr. President, Senators, what this found in Section 3 of the bill, where it syncs up and fills in a drafting omission from a bill that we've already passed, HB 799. That bill dealt with putting alcohol and marijuana on par when it comes to the issuance of temporary driving permits. The 799 language took away the disability. This language from other parts of the code states the eligibility conditions, primarily there not having been a violation within the previous 5 years. It was a drafting omission. This corrects it. Sections 1 and 2 came from the chairman of public safety and just makes an adjustment in the hours of DUI school, and I believe that has full backing of all interested parties. Be happy to answer questions.
You have no questions.
Urge support for HB 1020.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against House Bill 1020? The chair sees none. The questions on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee sub? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Questions on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. You got to go vote. Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? Mr. Secretary, close the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 4. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. As we prepare the next piece of legislation, I want to just take a moment to thank Augusta University for all of their COVID testing throughout the last 2 weeks. Augusta University Health and Community Health Care System for their great work, and their on-site COVID testing centers allowed us to safely complete the 2020 legislative session. I know that many of you have been a part of that testing protocol. I know our staff has continued to rotate in and out. They expect to have administered approximately 800 tests in the 2 weeks that they were here, and so I want to thank them for their sacrifice. Also, let's recognize the folks at Augusta University for their efforts to protect our staff and public safety and guests and all of us. So I just want to take a minute and recognize them, if you will. The chair is looking for the senator from the 53rd. All right, the Senate's going to stand at ease. Lunch should be here shortly, and there's a 1 o'clock transportation meeting. So let's plan on reconvening at 2 o'clock. Senate will stand at ease.